As we close out the year, the biggest thing that has been brought to my attention is bail. Bail is one of those things that when you do a crime, if the crime is not too bad, you're granted bail. The biggest thing is a lot of people can't afford bail. And so you have a lot of people who've done petty crimes who are stuck in jail to their trial because they can't afford bail. There was a young man in New York who did a petty crime, couldn't afford bail, and got stuck in Rikers Island where he eventually killed himself. It's a sad story because it didn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We need to live in a world where people who have low lying offenses shouldn't have to suffer because they can't afford bail. And the question will always come, who does it benefit? I say it benefits, you know, it benefits the system and it doesn't benefit the perpetrator. But the person I talked to this week has opened my eyes where he said we need to look at the victim. And I think we live in a society where we're so quick, we're so quick to discount the victim. We're too quick to hold up the accused. And it shouldn't be that way. We need to get back to a point in this country where the accused is just as important as the person who did the crime. Or the victim is just as important as the accused. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The person I interviewed this week and I talked to this week is Mr. Ken Good, a notable bail attorney and a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. He is an author of Goods on Bail. He has been fighting the good fight for over, you could say, 30 years. Mr. Ken?
All right,
Hello.
I'm here.
Sorry about that.
No.
So, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, I guess. It's after the holidays, so.
All right. So, the Bail Project. Why do you think when we look at what I'm trying to say? What do you think the purpose of cash bond that made it get repealed? That it's turned into the way it is now.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on where you are. Where are you located?
I'm located in the Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls area.
And what state is that? I'm sorry.
Wisconsin, sir.
Oh, okay. So you're in Wisconsin where they don't have bail. That's the minority of states. The majority, I mean, all except 3 or 4 still have private bail. I think what causes problems, and I'm not saying that this is the only cause, but I think what causes problems, and it's just endemic of a bigger problem, is that when you take away all accountability um, and I think that's one of the things that the private industry does is provide accountability and the highest level of supervision than the government can ever provide. I think then the government kind of loses control. You get more chaos. They don't have the ability to micromanage people. You see that all over the place where they don't, if people take off their GPS on the weekends, nobody's watching because the government doesn't really do things like this very well. And
I,
so, and I would say that that's just one part of a bigger problem. That when you get rid of private surety bail, you're really telling criminals because the government doesn't have the ability to too much about it. If you don't show up, then we just start having more chaos because criminals learn there's no consequences. Uh,
but I guess my question when I look at the Bail Project and I was doing some research, I see what they were trying to do, where you see they have a case of a young man in Los Angeles who got convicted of robbery for $30,000, and the bail project bailed him out. And once they did the investigation, it turned out there was no robbery to be had. So I see the good in it, but like my mom used to tell me, there's always a few people that will ruin it for everybody.
Well, but I think the whole issue of charitable bail is a solution looking for a problem. I mean, they raised an incredible amounts of money during protests, and they were making a pitch that we need this money because we need to bail out all these people. And they ended up not needing the money. They didn't bail anybody out. Probably 90-something% of the charges were never even filed, or they never even postponed. They're just released. And so I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing these same funds now looking for a solution, looking for a problem because they have all this money. And I think they're looking in the wrong way. I mean, they could be doing a lot more good if we would go to schools and try to figure out why inner city schools are failing, or try to tackle this drug problem that, if you look at, we're just really giving up on. And the drug thing is probably the source of probably the largest percentage of the cause of crime, because everything leads into either getting drugs, selling drugs, or making drugs, or a large part of it is. And so I think that the Bail Project is not equipped to do the job of the government. It's not equipped to do the job of the private industry. And a lot of these places, it's not regulated.
I
And
guess
so
I got a question. Do you feel like this, what's going on right now, the spike in crime and the cash and grab we see in the stores, is basically we can all contribute that back to the bail project of people getting out and now they're just acting lawlessly?
I don't, okay, I think that's a big overstatement, but can we say that that's part of the problem? I think that you could say that there's a huge problem of a lack of accountability. We have places in the United States or cities like Los Angeles where the prosecutor or the elected prosecutor and his staff are saying that, we just have a difference of opinion about who the victim is, because they believe the defendant who was charged with the crime is the real victim, not the victim of the crime itself. And I think that that is a sign of a bigger problem. The victims are really the people who are arrested now, instead of the people who they took advantage of or stole from or shot. Those are no longer the victims. You see that like in the case of the shooting in Tarrant County here in Texas, where a young man who's 18 years old, and he went and shot four people at the school, and then he was released on a $40,000 bond, very low bond for the crime. I mean, most places in Texas, they wouldn't be released at all. And then, and it was because, he was the victim, and they tried to raise money on GoFundMe, and it was taken down. And now you see he was rearrested just last week for a violation of his conditions of his bond. He failed a drug test, and so and that's all we know at this point. And he's been rearrested, and I think that that's kind of where we are. I would argue that, especially in our urban areas, schools have failed, families have failed, drugs are endemic,
I
and
guess
then
my question, because that's also a good point, but do you feel like the way the cash bail system was set up, that it benefited the rich and hurt the poor, where a guy would be stuck in jail for a petty crime, but he didn't have money to get bailed out? So basically, like you said, something was created to help, say, somebody for a petty theft. Not saying it's not serious, but to help them get out on bail, where it's turned in now to this. They don't go, which I think could make better if the bail system did a case by case, where they looked at the individual person and truly did a thorough interview, instead of this blanket approach that I'm reading that they have.
well, okay, I mean, first of all, we don't have the bonding industry doesn't have a blanket approach. Nobody does
No,
risk assessment
I'm
better than the
talking about
bonding industry.
the bail project. If instead of bailing
Well, I think
everybody out,
I
if they
think
did a case by case
no, I
look.
think that that's probably, first of all, the Bell Project was not created. I mean, those funds were very small. They had a very limited purpose, and then all of a sudden the protests happened and they raised all this money, and they're finding the same thing that I think that you would find if we look closer at it, and that is there's no first time offenders. There's no petty people accused of petty crimes that are in jail anymore, and we know that especially with the pandemic. For the last 2 years, uh, we've been trying to shove people out of jail. First time offenders haven't been held in jail for many years, and for when people say, "Oh, well, these people are going to lose their jobs," those are just talking points. Those are, I mean, the district attorney in Harris County said their jail's full right now, but it's very full of very dangerous people who need to be in jail. Part of the problem of why crime is increasing is we shut down our criminal justice system for 2 years. And so all of these things add up together, and the bad bail reforms where you take away accountability, where in Harris County, you have to miss court on a misdemeanor 2 or 3 times before the court can ever do anything to you, where nobody's even reviewing your criminal history. No one's looking to say, hey, this guy has been doing this same crime for the last 2 years and he's been arrested 20 times. Maybe he shouldn't be out on the streets, even if it is a misdemeanor, if we want law and order. Nobody's looking at those things, just, on these bad bail reform states, and y'all have your own problem with the parade, Christmas parade, and you've got people trying, the Bail Project or a similar group trying to raise money for his bond. This guy doesn't need to be out of jail; he needs to be in jail.
I guess my question when I looked at it and I started really looking at this picture, do you feel like what I'm trying to say, we went from one extreme where we felt like the system was unfair to people who couldn't pay the cash bail to now it's basically anybody who does an interview, from what I read last night, they just grant them bail without looking at the overall person. It's just, hey, the guy in Wisconsin, had they really looked at his case, maybe he wouldn't be out on bail and maybe he wouldn't have done what he did on that Christmas parade. Do you feel that private the Bail Project didn't take they haven't done their due diligence, as I'm trying to say?
Well, I mean, okay, but we have to start with they're not trained. They don't have law enforcement training. They're a charity, and so but they've not done their homework on. I mean, they haven't done basic criminal history check on some of these people, and there's many examples, but this is just one problem of a bigger problem, and that is, in these urban areas, which is where we've been pushing reforms. How do we process large numbers of people through the jail quickly and efficiently? And that's the big problem. That's the big thing that nobody wants to address. Uh, in New York, Harris County, other places, they've tried they've just tried, well, we'll just simply release the low, quote unquote, low offenders with no bond, or in Harris County without even seeing a magistrate. Unless you commit a crime on a certain list, you never even see a magistrate. You just get released on a $100 PR bond, which is a free bond, no matter how many times you do it. And so we've got a big problem of how do you process large numbers of people, and we don't have a solution for that works. Simple release is a complete failure, and the fact that still the Bail Project comes in that environment where low-level offenders are automatically released, or they're released on no bond. So if they want to continue to get people out of jail, then they have to almost be like a bondsman. They're going to be getting out dangerous people. That's why they need to be looking for other things, other problems, and because they're bailing out dangerous people because that's all that's left.
I guess
And
my question is, if they came to you and they said, how do we fix it? Or do we look, I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you feel like they don't have people with your experience, or say other people with your experience on staff, to give them guidance to say, no, we shouldn't bail this person out. Okay, this person should get bailed out, but no, not that person. Do you feel like they don't have someone on their staff with that experience and that keen eye to tell them who should get bail and who shouldn't?
they should only be bonding out low-level offenders, first-time offenders, or people who are well, I would stick with that. I think they should only be bonding out low-level offenders, first-time offenders, people who are claiming poverty. I don't believe that really those people are in jail. And that's the reason why the Bail Project is getting the bad press that they are, is because those people aren't in jail. The Bail Project, I mean, how do you fix this system? It's not a how do you fix the Bail Project system or the charitable bail system. How do you fix the processing of large numbers of people through our urban jails? How do you fix that? That is the big question that we have a huge disagreement on. And there's different ways that have been tried in the past. Individual magistration works, is constitutional, and the problem is it's very expensive. And the urban areas haven't paid for that in a long time because they've always diverted large numbers of people away from individual magistration. Historically, what they've done is a bail schedule. That's what's been under attack for the last 4 years, and that's what um, but that's what works. That's what's been held constitutional. You divert all the people who can afford bail, and then you're left with the few people, or the ones you have more time with the ones left to make a review of their criminal histories. Simple release is the newest thing that's been tried. It's a complete failure. Risk assessments are another proposal that have now been debunked and rejected by science, and the largest digital companies in the world issued a joint statement saying they should not be used as a part of criminal justice reform. And then just preventative detention, where we just hold somebody until their criminal case goes to trial. We don't want to do that because we can't afford that either. If we can't afford individual magistration, we sure can't afford preventative detention. So
I
we got to
guess though.
find something that works. And the bail project or the charitable bail funds are finding the same problem as the courts are. How do you make that determination of who to hold and who not, who to let out, and what kind of bail to set?
I guess my thing is, if I was creating the Barrel Project now, I would want someone with your keen eye and your experience, but I also would want to, like you said, first offenses, low petty crimes, but I would also want to look at a case by case basis where you truly do a thorough interview with the person before you give them a $30,000 bond, where you maybe have somebody who can read somebody that walks in a room and says, you know, basically does a thorough interview and says, to get the picture of the person before you say you walk out and you're like, no, this guy's going to go out, he's going to commit another crime, or no, this guy is completely interview. I mean, it takes the time, but a person who, with your experience, who has been doing this for years, it would be beneficial to me and my company versus, like you say, the bad press the Bail Project's getting now, where I feel like the system is basically, it went to try to solve a problem, but I feel like the system's going to go back to where the problem was before, and you're going to see people who couldn't bail out before because they were poor and didn't have money for bail. It's going to go back to that system.
You can never have a system that is fair to everybody. You just have to have the fairest system for everybody. And this when they first started attacking, I mean, we want to say this is bail reform, but this is really criminal justice reform. It's a bigger issue than bail. Bail is just the easy target. It's the easy attack. And everybody wants to say, well, first we had to say, well, we're going to change bail because it's unconstitutional. Well, we now had 2 courts say it's constitutional. So now we're hearing the next argument. Well, it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
I think
And
I think you would look at the victim or the people that they've hurt and say, well, what's fair to that person that you've killed, or that person that you robbed from? How is that fair to them?
well, you've heard a lot of during the protests that we had last summer. Well, it's just property damage. It's all covered by insurance. Well, I said at the time, you've got the political leaders of these urban areas who are not protecting their tax base, and who's going to suffer the most for that in the next 2 years, the next 3 years, the next 10 years, when those businesses do not build back because they don't feel safe that they're going to be protected because they're not their leaders have told them it's just insurance.
Mr. Ken? Hello?
Hello.
Oh, my bad. I lost you for a
Oh,
minute.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
I mean, so now we see businesses that are not building back because they can't they don't trust their local politicians, and you see who's that going to hurt most? It's going to be hurt the people in the inner cities because they have less job opportunities. I mean, if the Bell Project wanted to do something really good where we'd all stand up for them, they would go figure out why and jump in the middle of this, pick people that they can get bond out of jail, train them for jobs, and get them to be productive citizens. I mean, when you bond out somebody who then commits another crime, I mean, there has been a ton of failures before that person got there. He was failed in school, he's failed in family, he's failed drugs, he's failed in job opportunities. Why don't, I mean, if we're going to say, if we're going to give up on these people in the criminal justice system, a lot of them, it's their last opportunity to become productive. And if we give up
I
on them
guess
then and say, we're not going to hold you accountable, then why are we shocked that crime is increasing?
I guess like you said, and I've talked before, and I guess when I look at this situation, I'd like to think you could do a case by case basis, but after this conversation, I guess I'm getting into the mindset that you can't, and that we should go to, look at a tier system, low level crimes, people with first time offenses, but people with your expertise, I'd like to think that you could really be a person like you would be a great asset to the Bell Project, because they could look at you and look to your experience and says, hey, should we bail this person out? Or what do you think? I think they have people who mean well, but they don't have the overall experience. And from what I'm reading, it looks like they buy anyone's story when they go in a room and the person says they were treated unfair, and they don't see that maybe this person is just lying to them to get out of jail.
Well, Texas just enacted some major bail reform, which I would say is the opposite of what we've been seeing everywhere else in the country. It's, the cornerstone of it is accountability, and it for the first time requires judges to review criminal histories before setting bail. It just sounds so common sense that you would review somebody's criminal history before setting bail, but the problem is it's the technology to allow it to get done. Most counties have historically reviewed the criminal histories in their county, but they didn't have the database or the technology to review statewide criminal histories. Well, now that's been mandated by the Texas legislature. I think that is the number one change for bail reform in Texas, and if that were required nationwide, I think it would have a positive influence uh, uh, on setting bail. But the problem is we're kind of
Hello, Mr. Ken. Looks like we're having some technical
Are
difficulties.
you here?
I'm here. I'm sorry. Can
It
you
must
hear me?
be every time that my phone does goes to the screen, it shuts off. It shuts this off. I just think that reviewing criminal histories would have a positive influence on setting bail, but it would also require bail to be higher for a lot of people. And we have groups in our country that would attack that, saying that's somehow unfair because we have a crime problem in our inner cities, and everybody that can move out of our inner cities that can afford to have. And so sometimes the inner cities are heavily populated with one or two minority groups, and everybody says, well, the United States incarcerates more people than anybody else in the world. We have a higher drug problem than anywhere else in the world as well.
And that is sad. I guess last two questions I want to ask. Do you feel like the Bail Project, for everything that's going on and all the negative press they're getting, do they reform and get better, or do you feel like they get worse? And last question here would be, if they came to you and they said, Mr. Ken, how do we truly fix this problem to make it better for everyone?
Well, I think the Bell Project has a finite amount of money, and groups like this historically have had problems with when they have this kind of money. They have problems with um, misuse, and it'll slowly go down because they'll make poor decisions. And so I think over time that will fix itself. If I was asked, how do I fix this? I would I would look, I had a client tell me one time, don't tell me what you're going to do in the future. Tell me what you've done in the past, and I'll tell you what you're going to do in the future. So I think we have to look to see what's worked in the past. We know what works in the past is if you set up a bail schedule to divert as many people away from magistration that can afford it, and then you have the magistrates can spend what time they have left with the people who did not get out pursuant to the schedule. That gives them more time, and they can have more discretion, and they can review their criminal histories. And then the people who bonded out according to the schedule based on their criminal history, well, then they can be looked at again at their arraignment. If the judges want to make an assessment or make a change that there's that they feel is needed. As many people away from magistration as we can. We don't need this fallacy of saying we need to treat everybody the same. We need to have a system that treats everyone exactly the same. Causes
I I I I,
chaos
I
and
like to say
causes
we
problems.
I like to say we should. Overall, you would think in a perfect world everybody would be treated the same, but I guess in my mind, excuse me, every crime is differently. So I can't treat a guy who broke into a house the same as somebody who killed a person. I'd like to say you have to, as a judge, if I was a judge, I would truly look at a case by case basis
Well,
in
but we
each
want
crime.
first time offenders treated the same. We want people who've been charged before the same. People who have a criminal history of 3 convictions in the last 3 years treated the same. We want people who have a substantial criminal history treated the same. But we don't want to treat people with a substantial criminal history the same as a first time offender. That's the absolute ludicrousness of the arguments we're hearing.
Very, very true. Very truly. Last question: do you feel like people with low-lying offenses, if the judge said, "I'm not going to give you bail, but I'm going to give you an ankle monitor," that would be as a sense to maybe put the bail project out of business? If we truly maybe did, some people got an ankle monitor vices bail.
Um, No, I mean, do you know how expensive the ankle monitors are? I mean, it would be cost more for them to have an ankle monitor than to be on bail. And uh, I mean, this isn't about getting the bail project out of business. This is about what works for criminal justice reform. That would not work, and it would be very costly for individuals and also for the counties for people who were poor. And so I don't think it would work at all.
All right. Well, Mr. Ken, I definitely appreciate your time and thank you for this conversation. I've learned a lot, and I shall uh, take it with me. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for joining me on Political Talk.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Ken. Mr. Ken, I want to say, has basically put things in a different perspective for me. I've never really been a big fan of Texas, but he has shown me something that opened my eyes. It has shown me that the mainstream media has suppressed the good that Texas is doing and the good that even a person like Mr. Ken is doing. So I want to personally say I thank him for his service, and I thank him for giving me the time to interview him and ask him these important questions. The Bell Project, I just want to say, I think they mean well. I think they mean well. But like I said, and my mom has always told me, it only takes a few people to mess it up for everybody. And what we're seeing is the people right now are messing it up for everybody because they're giving the Bell Project a bad name. And I honestly believe that they did not mean for what to happen. And I do agree with Mr. Ken, there should be a tier system. But deep down, I like to think somebody with Mr. Ken's expertise could be on the staff, could read people, could look at files, and could give them the expertise that they're missing. And we could catch that guy that happened at the Christmas parade. We could catch those other individuals that are happening right now, but they're not because you have people who are being fleeced and being fed sob stories because they want to do good, but everyone is not good. And I think that's where the Bail Project is going wrong. I honestly believe a guy like Mr. Kin could turn that organization around and put them on the right path, put them on the right track, and to restore their name and to restore their mission creed for what they wanted to do and what they need to do, but what they're failing to do.